All right, welcome to our Mochi Podcast, the only podcast rated R for Robin. My guest today is Louis of Albiverse, one of co-founders of 2plus. Louis, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me here, Robin. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So you are in Paris, and 2plus is an online. It's a DAO. Is it a DAO? Like a
Is it a
DAO,
DAO?
like a DAO
Not
creator
today, for
group.
sure not. It has, I think, it has some aspiration to be community driven, community owned in the longer term,
Mhm.
but we're not taking the, I guess, what we've seen as the canonical DAO route in the past, like I don't know, a year or two. Like launching a token, having community, token weighted voting and stuff like that's not the path we're taking. We're taking like a more centralized approach, step by step approach to decentralization, quote unquote.
Mhm. And so, like the DAO space right now, like where everybody's trying to figure out like the best way to organize and coordinate. And so your approach to kind of like contributing to the DAO creator space is mental wellness or mental fitness as opposed to
Mm,
mental wellness or mental health. Can you talk a little
mm.
bit about that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I guess it came really organically from my experience in the DAO space. I had been, or even I think DAO space. I think we can say Web3 because the experience of
Hmm.
Web3 people. I'm in DAO as a Web3, let's say startup employee or DAO employee. There are definitely differences, but there are also similarities, and there are also similarities with, to a certain extent, with like working remotely for any Web2 startup or anything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, just like I had been working in the space for a few years, contributing to DAO related projects for helping projects grow their communities and engage them and work more and more as DAOs or function more and more as DAOs. I have experienced how intense the space could be and how bad it could be for my mental health. I had been through some kind of burnout once, and I was about to kind of like wasn't not in a very good state. Another time I kind of like said realized that my mental health had become a priority, like solving, being able to be to keep a very good mental health in the longer term was like a
Hmm.
new goal for me. So I took some time to focus on this, um, and yeah, and eventually so twoplus was born out of this experience that working in DAOs was a pretty bad experience at this point. You're just like going through 100 different tools. Your life is about answering to the stimuli of notifications. Which is a very poor way of interacting with the
Hmm.
world. You really have poor connection with people. It's really bandwidth is really narrow, like with text-based messaging or even video. Like there's so much lacking. 95% of like, well, I don't know what's the exact percentage, but like so much of our brain's operations are subconscious, and there's so many things that go beyond just speaking to one another. Like nonverbal communication is one thing, but it's even just like there are so many things we don't really know or understand well that happen in person because that's how we've been designed for what we've been designed for. So for all these reasons, that's kind of like how that was the initial intention, like, with twoplus. Like, how can we make life in DAOs better? Because if we're creating new organizations, and working in these organizations is worse than working in the traditional corporate world that I didn't want to work in because I
Hmm.
felt it really sucked. We had failed. So that was kind of the initial intention, and eventually now it's blending with my personal experience with mental health, and how the kind of like the drive that I've built to make it more appealing, more fun, more legible to a new type of population. And so yeah, we can talk about that more. Also, difference between mental health, mental fitness, and all these things
Hmm.
that we're kind of like still, honestly, we're kind of like still figuring
Hmm.
everything out. We're no experts. We just like, I guess, have strong desire to bring new possibilities. And I think my feeling as a person, and was that I didn't really have any good options, or there was a lack of options when I was working on my mental health in the past few years, and I had been to therapy um, before and during Web3, and because I had been working, I wanted to try to explore myself and see what I could unlock, or how I could suffer less in some ways, because I had
Hmm.
been suffering quite a bit in some moments in my life. So that was a necessity to explore and stuff, um, and yeah, and more recently, I had been exploring other things like new tools that have been so impactful and so relevant in my journey towards a better mental health. That was like, I have to share this. I have to share this. I want to share this. I
Hmm.
think it's a solution. I have, I'm a very intuitive person. I have a hard time doing anything else but following my intuition. So that's, I guess, both strengths and weakness.
Hmm.
But that's kind of like why, eventually, like, we're going this kind of mental fitness route. Is like, yeah, we have to create a new storytelling around mental health. We have to communicate it in a different way. We have to also create new, I don't know, I mean, many people are doing this at the same time, but I'm focused on my tiny bit of what I'm doing. So
Hmm. So what is two plus in like so many words? Okay, so first of all, like two plus the name. I still have no
mm,
idea what I'm supposed to be adding two
yeah,
to.
yeah. So it's two plus. I like it lowercase, all attached, like letters. It's not related to, so it's related to Web3 spirit in a way.
Hmm.
So at the time I founded two plus, we really focused on DAOs, and we're still like
What year
pretty
did
focused on
did
DAOs
you guys
today.
start?
Sorry.
What year did you guys start? Just
Just like, I think that was December of last year. We started, like, creating content together. Some people resonated, came in a way, came together, kept like sharing thoughts on
hmm.
what was good, was wrong, or potential solutions and stuff, for a few weeks before we started being more concrete about what we would do next. Um, but yeah, so two plus is, so the definition of collaboration is two or more people are collaborating, are working together towards a shared goal.
Hmm.
And so I think that's kind of like really what I like about Web3, is this sense of we're uh, you know we're a group, we're a DAO, we're not just one person. We're yeah, it's tooling for organizations, tooling for networks, rather than just like what this one player experiences or one player logics. Um, and so two plus, today, how it applies to what we do today is, because we're using Mochi, basically, like, we have this strong focus on how to leverage a good social experience to motivate people to build habits
Hmm.
and that are good for their mental health, and eventually help them achieve their goals. It's kind of like where we're heading now, what we've been doing for latest iteration of our course. And so, yeah, I think this sense of um, teamwork and group orientations towards the group, and how we can leverage the group to power things, is really where the name two plus comes from,
Hmm.
for
Gotcha.
more people.
So can you talk a little bit about like your background, both like professionally and educationally?
Sure, man. Yeah, so education wise, I had a fairly traditional education in France. I went to public uni for a few years, and previous to university, I wasn't really, let's say, a rigorous, very rigorous. That's cool. I
Hmm.
would always kind of like make sure that I, would pass the next grade. But yeah. So, but once uni started, I was like, all right, this is serious. I want to start working because I have big aspirations. I want to be Elon Musk. So, like many kids, when there are
Was
many
it the wealth
young
aspiration, or
males.
was it the influence, or the
Yeah,
meme
possibly.
hood?
I think like if I had to choose between like wealth and status and all these things, I think status is definitely like, I'm more of a status driven person than a wealth
Hmm.
driven person.
Hmm.
I don't really care about money until like unless I mean unless it's a
To an
problem to just
extent.
like
Yeah.
yeah, of course to an extent, but I'm like what am I going to do with a very large amount of money? So possibly I can do a lot of projects. I think it's really cool to have lots of money to make 2 plus happen, for example,
Hmm.
to create stuff. But I think my intention was like, I think Elon Musk is really like the incarnation of the guy who wants like all the attention. He wants to be the savior of humanity to an extreme.
Hmm.
I think I have this same drive to a lesser extent. I don't know if where was it where and I'm really conscious of it now that now I'm growing up. Sometimes it's like this is childish. Like who cares? Just let's just live a normal life. I think when I was younger, I was like less self-aware, and
Hmm.
that's probably like a reason why. Um, and I think yeah, I think the narrative was like everything sucks but tech, where you can do like these big companies and change the world and whatever. I think that was pretty this primitive narrative that goes with tech. That was like 10 years ago.
Hmm.
um and so yeah, I started like working a lot, pushing myself a lot, thinking I want to have to be this, have to be that, I want to be an entrepreneur. And honestly at the time I didn't know a thing about myself. So that's what I eventually realized. I'm actually so different from Elon Musk in so many different ways. I
But you were like
um
always interested in like tech and
I think that's kind of like default ideals brought me to have it. I'm here now because that's where I've been grinding my way towards early on.
Mhm.
But today I wouldn't be like oh, I want to go in tech. Um, I Yeah, I mean today my focus, I mean the things that I'm most excited by are like the brain and all these things is spirituality and neuroscience and all the things that I think I'm in transitioning to from like a Web3 person to a mental fitness person, let's say. Or
Mhm.
that's kind of like what I'm trying to do. And so yeah, I think and eventually as I think I was rejecting also a lot of things that were in me. um I wasn't really accepting that I think I'm much better with at humanities, as philosophy, psychology. I'm much better with people, much better with like community management, community building. I'm a very social person, and like things that are praised in the values, like be a coder, be good at math, do computer science, be an entrepreneur, build a product. And honestly, I was like the opposite. So I kind of like was pushing me in the wrong direction for a time, and that was really painful. I was trying
Mhm.
to be like again a very good student and stuff, but I'm kind of like the opposite. I'm kind of like more creative, and I've had time like spending long hours studying, but I still did it and still pushed myself really hard, which eventually led me to like have such high anxiety and such high, because I was
Mhm.
just like going against myself this whole time, like for multiple years.
You're kind of saying like like the school route was kind of pushing you towards personal achievement as opposed to like relational growth and interpersonal uh like development.
Yeah, yeah. I think for one part, yes, and I think that's in part true. Like how arbitrarily having credentials that are good, like I was grading
Yeah.
better and better schools, helps eventually. Like I think this has helped in my path, even in Web3. Like knowing you've been to a great school, like people are more likely to work with you, or like they want to go on, jump on a call with you at the beginning. And now people don't really give a fuck. They want to see what you've been doing. That's cool, and maybe that's if that's a project, they will look at it in Web3 more than other places. But yeah, having these credentials always helps.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think no, I think just in the choice of my studies, I was doing finance and then eventually interned at a VC, and then went to a startup. Like really, like the most traditional thing you could think of what's cool, today or 5 years ago or 10 years ago as a young graduate or as a young student. um, and that's still happening in business schools and stuff. Like 20 years ago, people wanted to go work in FMCG, whatever it is. Then 10 years later, they want to go in banking, then consulting, and then VC, and that's the status kind of like route. Or be an entrepreneur is the other option. And
Hmm.
so I was kind of like still in these tracks until I kind of like forked. And I was really unhappy about the things that were happening to me. So I kind of like had this typical like almost cliche, going traveling to Asia, going to
Oh.
India, going to China with my backpack on my own for a few months. Um, and so because I was looking for all the sensors, like really deep into philosophy, I was reading a lot. I mean, yeah, and try looking for myself. And I thought that crypto would be a much better option for at least like the aspirations I had and stuff, or the experiences I had.
Hmm.
Traditional like corporate world hadn't made me happy because I didn't really have the norms or the culture to at that time like or today I could probably do it like fit in because
Hmm.
I think I can work with myself much better, but at the time like it was really hard. So yeah, I and that's why like crypto was really appealing. I was like, what this was. I was almost pretentious. Like, what are these Web2 guys doing? Like, they're kind of like building startups for these B2B, I don't know, last mile sales thing. That's
Hmm.
not really meaningful. Crypto says that they're going to um,
Change
change
the
the
world.
world. Yeah, or that it's the next like nation states are going to disappear. And so that was like, oh, that's where innovation happens. And also that this is much more wild. This is, and I had this intuition that this would be a cool thing. So I was like, let's spend my time here and do
Hmm.
whatever I can
Yeah. So
here. Ended up
how
in
actually
DAOs.
did you get involved in the crypto space, Web3, blockchain,
Yeah,
et
that's a
cetera,
good.
et cetera?
So while I was traveling, um, in
A
India,
monk
China,
tried to
and
sell
stuff.
me an NFT.
Exactly, man. I was in this like monastery, this temple, and Shiva came to me and was said like, "You're going to to mint for the rest of your life."
Hodl.
Exactly. Um, no, so I went traveling looking for answers, and no, because in my last year, so sixth year of studying, because like in France, it's really, you have to go for masters straight after bachelor and stuff. It's
Hmm.
pretty honestly, it's not great. It's not great looking back, but I already had discovered crypto through my VC internship. I had
Mm.
done like this market research on Ethereum, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And so in my last year, I was like browsing, listening to podcasts, and thinking like, should I drop out? That would make the storytelling would be great, like dropping out and stuff, and going to work in crypto and stuff. But I eventually didn't drop out. Um, and so I kept following. So and when I went traveling, I was thinking, and kind of comparing my thoughts with like Indians, what I would learn there through experience like Indian culture, or especially I guess like my experience of China and how China was different, how big it is, and how it really struck me like I was struck by a bus almost like when I realized how real China is, how like the momentum of the country, how rich the culture is, how big it is, and we don't ever talk about it here. In
Mm.
honestly, except from like in the news sometimes Xi Jinping this or that, or China and Taiwan and stuff. Like we actually don't get how of a continent this thing is. Like it's the same as the US and the Europe combined. It's
Hmm.
massive. Like, and so I was like, wow, this is big. So I had a few narratives at the time that crypto was kind of like the answer of the West to China's centralization, that we deeply needed it to kind of like, if we didn't want to be imposed Chinese like all the Chinese value systems and culture, like
Hmm.
um and yeah, and a few things that I don't say. Yeah, and also a lot of theoretical frameworks about how like DAOs would eventually like help harvest the hive mind, and how that would like that will help us go beyond the limits we have to not understand each other, because we have these biological limits of we're really shaped by our environments, and it's really hard to understand that this other side of the planet there's this issue that we have to care about. It's almost impossible to feel it, and then because we don't feel it and we're always acting on emotions, whether we like it to acknowledge it or not, we're not able to function with each other because we live in different environments. That's
Hmm.
And I saw that through the, I think, elections in 2017 in France. Like, so basically, like, I mean, all over the West, like, populism is rising. Trump has been president in the US.
Yeah,
France,
remember
it's not
those years.
the case. But yes, so, and I was like, we can't understand each other because we just have such different experiences in the same country, and it's just so hard with so anyway, lots of theories about how governance in crypto would be bringing tons of new models and Cambrian explosion of governance by, I think that was Frieder Sham who wrote it, but that's kind of like thing where we would iterate with governance at the speed of software, which is really the case, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so because of this, and because I didn't have a technical background, I applied to Aragon. um
Hmm.
I can't, no, at first I was like, I was actually hanging on a forum. I was still in China, and I was like hanging on the forum of Aragon building, which was like one of the three projects working on DAOs at the time. They had raised like a large amount of money in ETH in 2016, like $20 million, worth like hundreds of millions even today.
Yeah, yeah.
um and and that was one of the, and they had like very strong ambition, very young founders, very strong ambitions on, we would, organizations of this future new governance, how that would be the app store for the future of organizations. Basically, we're building this framework that eventually anyone could build an app on, so whether that's be voting, project management, anything. And so
Hmm.
that should be, the bedrock for blockchain-based organizations and even nation states and stuff, like crazy big visions that you can see in crypto. Unfortunately, doesn't work at this point.
Hmm.
I mean, hasn't played out exactly um, as planned, and so that's kind of like how. And then I flew to Berlin to an Aragon event, met the founders, and I was like, oh, I was hustling very hard to like get closer to the project and participating in the forum, and eventually like they proposed me a job at the association, which was the executive body, I think still is,
Hmm.
that oversees like some functions in the project, including governance and stuff. So that was really interesting. But that's how I made my way into Web3 in the first place.
Hmm. And then, so, what would you say is kind of like the difference between organization and stuff, like with between Web 3 and Web 2? Because, like right now, as we're trying to build out a bunch of different new community models and a bunch of different new incentive models, what kind of makes Web 3, in your opinion, like more scalable for the purposes of like, a new way to organize people remotely and like across like much larger spaces and backgrounds.
Yeah. That's interesting. Um, So I think like I came in with the space like with a lot of, I also wrote like about the differences between DAOs and Web 2 early on. Um, so that was so I was really curious to see what would be new with DAOs. And so basically like all about like um but so basically like from ideals I kind of like experienced like exactly how DAOs and Web3 organizations working today, and it feels like much more real than than expected in the first place. um I feel like I want to be, I don't know why I want to always, I have this habit of downsizing my expectations for things now, because I think I've been dreaming a lot in the past, and so I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, the Facebook was a new thing, a really cool connecting people, and now it's the Facebook, and honestly, it's there is some value, but it's like some massive downsides to it,
Yeah, we've
and
had
I
to
feel
curb a
like,
lot of expectations technologically from like what like the way like the 2000s to the early 2010s, like even with the recession we're like, oh no, things are getting better. We have a black president in the US. Things are like we're only making progress. No.
yeah, No, yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, totally. And we're all, I think we're all buying in. It's very kind of like it's almost really sounds religious at times, like especially Twitter, crypto Twitter and stuff. Like, sometimes people are fanatical about because there's so much stake on the line. People get crazy,
Hmm.
and because Twitter is this echo chamber and extreme things are just amplified. Eventually, that kind of becomes the voice of the space or these narratives that are viral. No
Hmm.
one owns them, but it's kind of like this. It's sometimes pretty scary. Um, and with DAOs, there's this same pattern where like people enter the space. Wow, because a few
It's all about
people,
like
and
hype
including I,
cycles and stuff.
yeah, and including me, like I was so hyped from the beginning. I wrote these PCs, and now people write them. They read them. They're really hyped, and there's this cycle that you go through that we kind of like all go through wherever we go in Web3, and there's definitely then a moment we come down from this kind of like crazy euphoria, and even I mean there's the market cycles, but I feel there's a personal cycle to Web3 as well, where at the beginning you're so excited to see all these different things, visions and stuff,
Hmm.
and under the hood it's still really exciting, but it's really real as well. So if I had to differentiate, link, I want to link DAOs to Web2, saying how it's just DAOs. The difference with DAOs compared to Web2 organizations, it's kind of like message for the next in 5 years. Web3 organizations will be not no diff, the difference here is really, I mean, it's the fact that value um, circulates on chain, that there's tokens, that there might be a governance, and so part of the stack of things. So for remote startups, communications, most operations already happen online,
Hmm.
and with DAOs, and so DAOs are not so different. DAOs are different, like in the fact that they are born on social media. They're born on Twitter. Honestly, that's how concretely it happens, whether we like it or not. Crypto is built on like the social
Yeah, yeah.
network of crypto is built on Twitter and Reddit.
It's on legacy
Um,
media systems and like the already established social media platforms.
Yeah, so totally. So to me, what's happening now is that DAOs are organizations that are able to embrace this social media layer and be built on top of this, and eventually build the rest of the stack. So in the social media layer, you just have like this, yeah, social. There's basically it's same as you have the streets of you're in the streets of a city, there's this whole like street infrastructure, and so people can bump into each other, they can chat with each other and stuff, but you don't really have the offices, the banks, the buildings, or whatever it is, or like the
Hmm.
and what crypto is about is like it's actually now like it's adding pieces to that stack that weren't here before, which is like we can now have value circulating in this social network. It's not integrated, but it's starting to be.
Hmm. It's like building out like the
We
city's
have
infrastructure and like its utilities and things for people to actually start continuing to like improve their lives and make businesses on the platform and on the technology.
Yeah, I think eventually that's really what it comes down to, and it's kind of like we'll look back and it's really continuous from whatever has been existing before. It's going to be appended to this, whether we're like because I mean, yeah, the world is like way larger than crypto, and culture precedes crypto, and so yeah, crypto is going to be appended to this body of work. So yeah, I think we're already seeing Web2 organizations that have some, I mean, really community-driven Web2 or creators. We're also already seeing like some companies that have like communities curating, where they're already like crowdfunding things like that. Communities curating what's on the on the platform that they're buying from. So all these trends, they already exist. It's just like we're adding tokens in the mix. We're adding like value, circulation of value. So
Hmm.
it's really simple. um so yeah, that's why I think DAOs, this it's like almost like Ethereum is like TCP/IP or whatever protocol, HTTP. I'm not even very clear on exactly what these things do.
Yeah, I'm not
um
super tech savvy either.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, so I was, because there was nothing 3 years ago. I mean, in terms of social DAOs and stuff, I did nerd about like Ethereum and so I've got a few I've got pieces from that time, but I'm definitely not yeah, really deep tech person.
Hmm.
And so yeah, Ethereum, like, it's a protocol. It's awesome with algorithmically administrated DAO. That's how, like, the network is administrated and the rules are enforced. There's a crypto economic system that's enforced by math, because it's math. Like, the way the algorithm is math. It's and so because it's algorithmic, it's a DAO. It's decentralized. I mean, it's fairly decentralized, not entirely. It's fairly
Hmm.
autonomous because you can let it run without no one doing things. I mean, maybe you won't have any updates anymore, but it will still run. It will be inefficient, but it will run uh, how it is. And so yeah, but I think like 99.9% of organizations will not look like it, because there'll be like new protocols coming up from crypto, and DeFi has been a new wave, and some others and stuff. But yeah, what people will understand about these things, what creators or people like you and I, or whatever it is, I think will look more like normal projects operating online and using tokens in some way and engaging, being really community driven, because the web today is really community driven. It's just like it's
Hmm.
crypto, it's web, it's just um, how interactions happen online, and what people, yeah, want to experience.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, so two plus is like approach to like engaging with the DAO community and like contributing to the developing DAO creation space is mental fitness. So yeah, well, I brought it up earlier, and you said you could elaborate a little bit on what is like mental fitness, and like why is that important in the DAO space, in your opinion, in your experience.
yep. um, so some So it's pretty straightforward. Mental fitness is just comes from analogy to physical fitness. And so basically the narrative is, what happened in the 1950s in the U.S. and the rest of the world, the Western world, eventually was like, after the war, there was like this modernization happening. Suburbs became a thing in the U.S. Household utilities and all these things. Processed foods became a thing. People became
Hmm.
a lot more sedentary. The lifestyle changed, and so a number of things came up, like health conditions that didn't exist previous to the war, because people were active, they were using their body, they were moving around, cities weren't designed the same. Like, a
Hmm.
lot of things happen, and so basically kind of like created this health crisis in the US, that led to the rise of fitness as a potential solution. And so whether it has fulfilled its mission is not entirely the case, but it's partly the case as well. And fitness has been appended to, kind of like the mainstream culture, let's say, for different ways, and people do different things with it now. But at some point, like, the state and some fitness gurus and some doctors were like, all right, we have to be preventative instead with like health,
Hmm.
instead of just like curing these symptoms of heart attacks and stuff, like, we're like multiplying. So fitness has to be a thing, and it grew in popularity, and there was like a whole culture that's been created around it. And eventually, now it's tied to some kind of like status thing and stuff. I think like what we're seeing now, with how in the past 10 years and even more in the past 5 years, how lives has changed from, like, a lot of things have been ported to the digital realm. And as we mentioned yesterday, we are not yet in this like Ready Player One metaverse, when we're experiencing like things and sense things and stuff. And it's still very poorly designed. Like, basically our lives have got ahead of both like our technology, their understanding of the technology, and our culture and our ability to cope with like the new way we live. Like, the culture hasn't evolved at the same pace in the past 5 years. It
Hmm.
hasn't coped with the fact that we're now spending, like, I don't know, plus 100% of our time browsing Twitter. So that's especially the case for Web3, but for like also a lot for younger generations who are like highly digital native. And so the assumption here is like this change in lifestyle has this time around has led to another type of conditions and problems, like an increase in mental health conditions,
Hmm.
because our information diet and what we process every day with our brains has changed so much.
Oh,
Because
that's
like
interesting to think about.
this junk food, of notifications and stuff, we don't really provide any essential things like connection. We don't really provide like also downtime. Like people are always on, don't even know that, and eventually you burn out because never, your world is like this muscle brain contraction. That's what burnout comes from. It's just like exhaustion from, it's like, you're going and working in a factory all day for forever. Your
Hmm.
back is going to break. That's exactly what happened in factories, a while ago, and peasants and, in medieval, and honestly, like this can be gross analogies, but honestly, I see the same in burnout as what the injuries factory workers got, um, because we haven't changed the way, we take care of ourselves. So the idea with mental fitness is like we need to be preventative. We need to be, if we're using, especially the way it's designed today, if we're using, all these tools, if we're spending all this time, and if we know that there's in a way no way around it, and that's a personal choice. I know that in my case, that was like I want to keep building Web3, so there's a
Hmm.
cost to this. Like, um, so there's both like education about how these tools work and how to use them intentionally, but there's also like how can you train yourself. It's like you've never run, been jogging in your life, and you're trying to run a marathon the next day. You're going to just like get injured, you're going to get exhausted, you're going to get a
Yeah.
heart. So the idea here is like you have to provide yourself with a degree or an amount of training. So if you're working like 8 hours a day, dedicate like 5 to 10% of it to, you know, cleaning up your brain from all this mess, having downtimes, journaling, processing your thoughts, meditating if you need to kind of rewire your brain in a correct way instead of like having it rewired, by adverse platforms like Twitter, and which like actively, anytime you respond to a notification, your brain remodels, according to this, and then you become more and more addicted. You lose and more of your focus, and eventually you're just like a slave to to the computer. You become one with the computer in a way, and
Hmm.
and you just, like you cannot sleep well. You cannot. So that's my personal experience. I think we all have different personal experiences with mental health, but that's how it translated for me. And I had like very poor attention, very high anxiety, couldn't prioritize, very poor emotional regulation. So lots of things related to like ADHD type symptoms. Um, and through like understanding, how to breathe correctly, how to also meditate, use the right type of meditation for the specific type regions of my brain, uh, it really changed the basis that I'm operating with. Really, like you're going for a run 20 minutes each day. You're just going to end up feeling that next time you walk up the stairs, it's so easy. And
Hmm.
I kind of like have this same feeling of, whoa, it's so easy to process, this emotion now. It's so easy to pay attention. It's so easy to pay attention to these people, this person. So, so that's why, like, yeah, finally, like I think that's why, like, for with mental health so far, we've only had hospitals, so therapy, yeah, actual hospitals, um and now there's a trend towards, like, let's say, more, I don't want to say positive, because therapy is awesome and I've been benefiting a lot from it. um but like coaching is a new thing, and I think there's going to be a long trend of and self therapy and all these apps and stuff. And basically what we're seeing is like people try to start to be proactive, and mental fitness is actually about, it's not about, it's about breaking taboos with mental health, saying like it's so fun to have like great mental health and to feel great in your brain and body and nervous system, whatever it is,
Hmm.
because yeah, it's just where it all comes from. So that's such a great foundation for your life. And even though you're not really depressed, you can probably benefit from, doing some of that, some of exercising, and some intentional, living intentionally with your brain and nervous system and body, of course, is linked together.
Yeah, it's super interesting to think of it of like mental fitness in parallel to like physical fitness as being solutions to problems of success and development, and like accelerate the acceleration of productivity, the improvement of like how we're able to engage with other people in the world, and just like yeah, the fact that like we don't prioritize as much the the development of our competency, our literacy, and our ability to digest and process a lot of like the new information and like
Mm,
similarly to like food, we're still like learning how to eat properly, how to eat healthy. The US still has like a huge
yeah.
obesity problem,
Mm,
and like for like a lot for a long time with like health, like being obese was a sign of like affluence because you didn't have to work as much, you were able to get fat and whatever.
yeah.
um and similarly with like you know the taboo against mental health of like, oh, you have any sort of issues, it's because you're not resilient enough, it's because you're a snowflake, or
Yeah.
you're a fucking pussy.
Man, fuck it.
Yeah, but now like so I think it's good that we're seeing a lot of these the issues with uh focusing just on growth and speed of development as opposed to our like the human ability to engage with it in a way that's not self-destructive or toxic to like just the human condition.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think like so I've had a conversation recently on I think like the story the history of bringing wellness, so much of wellness that we know today in society, and I'm not a wellness expert because I've not I think most of the wellness industry actually doesn't really is targeted at young 20-year-old males, I guess.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't I wasn't really identifying with a lot of I don't know meditation things or yoga. Although I had been traveling as I said, and I had been digging into lots of things there. But so yeah, my younger self, I didn't really have tools to deal with the conditions that I had, nor knowledge available really. I feel like
Hmm.
it's more straightforward. There are things that when talk about it in fitness terms, like man, like if you're and again, I'll tell you about my case because that's the thing I understand best, and everyone has different uh, issues and stories and solutions. Um, but my prefrontal cortex, which is like the region that's regulating, that's the decision maker, the policeman of your brain, is like an analogy that often like
Hmm.
articles about ADHD make. It's like regulating, choosing, what's prioritized, emotions, decisions, also your focus. Like, are you going to focus on this bird passing by or the person you're talking with? People with ADHD have like either like low irrigation, blood irrigation in their PFC, or it's
Hmm.
prefrontal cortex, or it's not really developed, or they lack dopamine, they lack some kind of thing in this region, and so it doesn't really work properly, and so their attention is bad because they don't have this kind of like regulator or processing everything. um and it's so simple saying like yeah, focused attention meditation. It's just exactly the same as um wanting to go for a run when you want to lose like I don't know 5 pounds or whatever it is, or you're just rebuilding muscles in the prefrontal cortex, and eventually and that's really how it feels like week
Hmm.
after week, like feel how you're going to rebuild this. So um I think I hadn't seen really it explained in very concrete, like Western terms of it's fitness. It's like you're building muscles. Also, like and there are more and more books and more research on how neuroscience. So explaining it in very like simple terms of like, and people know what dopamine is at a very high level now. So I think the awareness around our brain, but it's also because brain science really early and we're so ignorant in our culture we really really struggle acknowledging anything that we can't understand, and we don't understand shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't a problem for Eastern cultures that could go and work to with experience and do yoga and do meditation and have these things and know that it's real, it's true, and they have such a you know they're more advanced. But so yeah, so far I think we're early in the in this history of all this body of knowledge being ported or merged with the East, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
if I put it this way. And so so far, I mean, started in '70s maybe with people going to India and rock bands and Steve Jobs and stuff, and meditation becoming a thing, and eventually yoga becoming a thing and stuff. So I see mental fitness as another iteration of we're sharing or we're appending this to Western culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so this comes at a price of, I mean, you named like things like I want to be more mental fit for productivity, so I'll meditate like 10 hours this weekend so I can just like work 12 hours a day because I want to build a company, want to be Elon Musk and stuff, type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I think this is a problem of Western culture, of just like things that we've been, you know, evolving in for so long. I mean, Western culture is changing, um, and um, yeah, the intention here is like from the moment people meditate, it seems like there are like insights and experiences that learning about yourself, being self-aware and stuff that are that you can't really lie yourself in the yeah, when you experience like meditation, how this changes you. um I think it hardly does wrong to people. It can, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's just like just the same way running too much can harm your body, or if you're really yeah, you're not balanced. I think balance is so important. So
Mm-hmm.
you could meditate to not think of your worries, which are very important worries that you have to actually care for, and just like build a brain that can ignore these worries and shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that. But yeah, I think this. So yeah, that's
I just kind of wish like milestones with like mental health stuff could work the same way as like strength training. Like I want to be able to lift. I want to be able to lift this much weight. It'd be great with like mental health. It'd be like, oh yeah, my telekinesis level has gone up this much, so where I can. I want to be
it's
able to
going to
read these many
happen,
minds, or I
honestly.
want to be able to. I want to be able to pick up stuff with my brain.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Whether or not, so because there are tools. I mean, there's like all the tech that's being developed that can be much more measurable. So I'm chatting after this podcast uh, with people from the Neuro Meditation Institute based in Oregon, and they're
Hmm.
I mean, among many different projects. I mean, they have a very science-based approach, and Jeff Tarrant, the founder of this institution, has been working as the chief scientist person for a company building devices that I don't think, I'm not entirely sure, but basically you have this thing called neurofeedback, where basically you have a screen in front of you. There is a device that's measuring the wavelength in different parts of your brain.
Hmm.
Basically, you have like I don't know, five different types of wavelengths that are like longer or small. Yeah, I mean more faster or slower depending on the wavelength, and this translates into very high activity in some part of your brain, very low activity, and research has started associating like, oh, very high activity in that part of the brain means like you're very anxious, or you might be and so basically we're trying to re-educate, we're trying to train your brain so that it operates more from this slower type of this longer type of wavelength.
Hmm.
um, and you're looking at the screen, and basically from this kind of like video game, whenever your brain goes into the right wavelength, it gets rewarded on the screen. So there's kind of like this dopamine reward circuit that eventually trains you to stay in this other wavelengths. This is so that's
Huh.
technologically assisted mental fitness, which honestly I don't come from, because I've been like
Interesting.
using this like good old meditation things. I'm curious to try them. I'm pretty sure that they'll be a thing.
Hmm.
Uh, in the
I mean, yeah, the
future.
brain is still very like our understanding of like the brain and how it works is still very much in its infancy.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this, but there's like empirical research on how this can be effective in solving such and such and such.
Yeah,
Um,
I was actually
so
wondering. So, what kind of like consultancy and what kind of uh like research background is kind of informing the way you're trying to approach 2 plus and educating people with mental fitness?
yeah, that's a great question. So I started 2plus as someone who had lived experience with my own mental health journey and a like very keen interest for it. Um, and just like being amateur and nerding about these things. So that's kind of like how the genesis of these things. And I don't have neither like a psychology background or a neuroscience background, although just like nerd about these things. Hopefully I get something
Hmm.
some point. Um,
Learning by proximity.
Yeah, exactly. Is
Hmm.
exactly. I mean, and I want to chat with a lot of people, but I don't see my job as being like the source of knowledge or credentials or legitimacy in the projects. I see my job as like bringing the right people in, and that's
Hmm.
where like this comes from. So for our first version, I worked with people who were near me that I had been in touch with. So we've been working this with called Othership, which is a really awesome like breathwork app. And so the other ship team came in and facilitated a bunch of breathworks. Um, some content I shared on neuro meditation was taken from the Neuro Meditation Institute. So that's wanting to work with them for the upcoming cohort because they have this awesome way of choosing the right meditation type based on exactly what region of the brain you need to work on and stuff,
Hmm.
and to explain also in very simple terms. And so I'm excited with this. And yeah, I don't know if I should. So I've been chatting with like I feel very excited because the fact of being in Web3 gives you a platform to, because some people in each industry in each organization are excited about Web3 and want to take part in some way. And so I'm chatting with like with a team of researchers from a really great institution in university in the US, who've been nerding about Web3 and are just excited to see what we're doing and stuff. And so I'm feeling that it's just about putting the right people together.
Hmm.
Um, so we're still early in the first version. Honestly, we're just like using proven techniques of meditation, breath work. You're gonna do all the resources are kind of like sourced, and it's pretty well known that these things have those types of benefit. Or if I'm kind of like sourcing papers from legit people and stuff as much as possible. If not, I'm bringing like experts directly to talk about the subject matter. um, there's so many gurus and stuff. Like there's no idea of um, yeah, that the cheap like create a big big I don't know narrative and then like selling these merch or products.
Hmm.
Eventually we might have like I don't know methodology or from what we learn, but also I think a lot of the value of 2 plus doesn't really come from the innovations we have on the mental health stuff. Um, it comes from the community, and what we're trying to innovate on isn't isn't the medical side of things or the coaching and stuff. Like coaching already exists, medical research already exists, and we'll just like start working with these people and put them together more and more. But the innovation here is like the work we do with Mochi, for example,
Hmm.
and the social experience we create in the cohort, because mental health is this thing where being with peers, having a connection with these people who have who share the same problem and stuff is like a game changer, and we're seeing this increasingly embedded in like mental health apps and stuff. But as a very social minded person, for example, like video games, I would never play a solo player game. So that's kind of like
Hmm.
I think I'm pretty far on the spectrum of like I have little interest in more and more as I grew up. But I think when I was younger, like I had no interest in like solo player activities. So there's like apps that remind you, you should meditate today and stuff. Like, oh, I prefer just like doing it on my own. And I feel like I'm kind of like creating what I like is like this group experience of community and try to accrue the right people in there, create really cool ways to work on your mental fitness, and also like we'll do a big work on the content end and stuff to reshape the narrative um, around mental fitness because yeah uh, and hopefully Web3 is the right place to do this.
Hmm. Yeah, let me pull up the site um, for people interested at 2 plus
Yeah.
that XYZ. So you guys you're running right now the alpha cohort. How many people is that? How many people do you generally aim for? Are you at least in the future looking for with future cohorts?
Um, so we have just finished last week the first cohort,
Oh,
um,
congratulations.
and yeah, thank you so much. Um, and so yeah, we're looking to have another cohort in October. Exactly, the kickoff date exactly is TBD, and we'll communicate more about it, and also shares all the learnings about this first cohort like in the coming weeks.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we had 24 participants from various DAOs. Honestly, we've been pretty grateful to have like people from Radar, Seed Club, a bunch of other that's Gitcoin even and Argon, and yeah, so that was great to have like very people who had like a genuine interest and just also just curiosity about what it would look like and stuff. And so we worked with these people for 4 weeks. We had two buckets of content, let's say. One was more like DAO collaboration related. How do you do meetings? How do you do conflict resolution? How do you do set your operating rhythms? We had the chance to work with the Ready, who's a consulting agency for like firms all around the world in self management. So they came in and told us about how to make decisions, how to operate and stuff. And so that was the DAO thing related part. And there was a more like mental fitness focused part, which was um, partly workshops on prioritization, setting boundaries, and all these things. Because I think, yeah, working from your bodies to set priorities and stuff in a very concrete way. And Mochi journey, where people were put in teams of four, like the Mochi, tool is designed. Um, and and people work towards a mental fitness goal in a very concrete way. So I will, I want to have a clearer mind. I will meditate, then journal every morning. And so basically, uh, these were the two parts here. What we learned, what I learned I mean, I don't know. Some people were really engaged, but I realized um, that we could do much better work at goal setting. I had a very exciting conversation with someone Moshi related yesterday about this specific part of the journey.
Hmm.
And then, so yeah, we have a lot of learnings because I want to double down on the Moshi experience. I think that's a lot of where like the innovation comes from. In our case, again, like a chord-based course are really cool, but you have chord-based course probably not exactly for Web3 people, but yeah, so pursuing the mental fitness and Moshi, I think, is the most exciting thing to me. That's part of the feedback we've received, that mental fitness was the most valuable piece of the course. Of course, like the rest was extremely valuable as well, and some participants also were more interested in DAO stuff. But now we're going to double down on Moshi and getting much more solid on the bringing the right experts early on, setting the right goals, providing the right knowledge so that we can 10x the evolution of participants through their Moshi journey.
Hmm.
And we're actively working with the Moshi team to enhance that experience as well, make it seamless. And I think a big goal as well is like, because there was a lot of different things in this first course, and I want to kind of like streamline, make it more focused at this point, and deliver more value in less time, I guess,
Hmm.
is also a goal. And I think, yeah, a good use of a very intentional use of how Moshi is structured and team experiences and stuff can be excellent to achieve that. So the final analogy to what we are compared to Moshi. So we're kind of like this mental fitness gym, and Moshi is providing for the machines that we're
Hmm.
using, the infrastructure that
We've
we're
got
using
the
for
weights.
people to practice. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that's kind of like yeah.
Yeah, so I guess one of my questions then is like, how did you come across Mochi? How did you like, what's been your experience interacting with like the Mochi tool, with the Mochi community, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. Um, I met I met Tyler from Mochi. I don't remember when it was. I think I might have reached out or I met Tyler through Seed Club maybe.
Hmm.
Because Mochi was going through SC004 or something like that.
Yeah, I think we were part of the
Um,
Seed Club cohort 4.
yeah, so I've been involved with Seed Club for yeah, almost since inception in more and I yeah, in various ways. Helping, I'm always curious to help with the accelerator and all the projects there. It's really interesting. Um, yeah, so we met, and yeah, the idea came out at some point to use Moshi for perhaps I think at first like wanted to use for the two plus team and two plus community, and eventually like I traveled to New York. I met with Tyler once or twice. We chatted a lot, and the more we chatted, the more I kind of like thought, that Moshi was a great fit for mental fitness. So we scheduled like a journey. I wanted to try the tool, tried the tool with a bunch of people in two plus. Um, and then like just decided to move forward with Moshi for the course. Made a bunch of yeah, try to be intentional with how we use it. Chatted a lot. I mean, the Moshi team has been super supportive. Like shout out Tyler, Alec, um, for all the help you've yeah on the first cohort. That was awesome.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I'm excited to see all the things that are going to come out as well with Moshi. Um, there's
Yeah,
a bunch of
I
things.
work on a lot of like the data stuff, and so I'm trying to get like I'm trying to make it like more transparent. So for data science,
Oh,
so that you can get more feedback about like performance rates, how people are how well they're keeping to their goals, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, yeah, I've heard about a cool dashboard. Um, but also, yeah, I mean, now I have a direct line with you. I know yeah, I'm excited to just like keep collaborating and see. And I hope that yeah, that I'll have a lot of feedback to provide as we go.
What did you kind of
Um,
find with like what were people's general goals for themselves over the course of your first cohort? Was it
yeah,
like generally like
that's a good
meditating a certain
question.
amount of time? Was it like journaling a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so the thing is, so as I said, I feel like uh, we did very poorly with goal setting
Mm,
um, in this first cohort. So we'll probably overcompensate and do it extremely well on the second one.
hmm.
Um, I'm really excited to see how this really changes the whole experience because I've been coached previous to, so I had therapy, but in the past, like I think my life really changed in the past like 8 to 10 months. I started two plus. I've been coached. I took time to for my mental health. Started like having this routine. Starting doing things in my personal life that I didn't do before, catering for my needs and stuff. Um, and so coaching, I mean, all these things have been some part of the things that I wanted to share. And because very kind of like almost like pretty self-centered way. um and coaching was part of like these things where like, wow, okay, it's really effective, it's really simple, but working from having a few sessions and working, learning to reassess like actually in very concrete ways your values and how you could leverage them to get more drive or to
Hmm.
pursue this instead of that and to prioritize and stuff. Things become much more simple. Um so yeah, want to do, yeah, goal setting much better. And we'll have like coaches, actual coaches, help do goal setting and stuff, which I'm really excited about. Um, and in the first cohort, people. The thing is, like, people have mostly heard. So yes, here goal setting happened on the ground of what people had already knew, kind of, because it happened early in the cohort, and so people had like one breathwork session. So and breathwork is like pretty impressive. How, I don't know if you're familiar, if you've ever practiced breathwork.
I breathe
Um,
now and then,
okay, okay,
I do an
yeah.
inhale every
Um,
here and there.
yeah, yeah. That's the first step. Like, man, this book, like, by James Nestor on breath is it's only punchlines. It's only like right and lefts in your in your guts. Like, that's crazy how, like, breath is underrated as like one of the big pillars of health and of performance as well. And the guy would go to athletes in the national US team and see how poorly they breathe, and eventually, like, it's pretty crazy.
Hmm.
But so, like, breathwork was one goal that was used to kind of like have more clarity, manage stress. Meditation was also like pretty canonical. I mean, I'd say, like, part of 10 or 12 people probably use meditation for such and such, like more clarity, less stress, that type of goals. And some people had like goals related to sleep. Some people had goals related to, yeah, things that were more personal. I think we're really saw the failure of our ability to set goal to help people set goals is when people kept had the goal to practice the same thing that they were practicing before the course.
Mm.
And generally for these people, the course hasn't been so valuable because,
They were just doing something
just
they were
keep
already
doing what
doing.
you've been doing.
Yeah.
And so one of them was like journaling each day, and another person was like very good in, I mean, very advanced in mental fitness and doing a really big stack of things, two types of meditation, then journaling, then gratitude, and then so they were like a whole routine, like 30-40 minutes, like pretty solid thing.
Hmm.
And they just, because we haven't been great at like organizing everything ahead of the Moshi journey. um I would have loved to kind of like at least, like, bring something in the mix and stuff. That's the goal. Because
Hmm.
there are so many things that can help. So our goal is going to be like, yeah, just the same way you go at the gym, and if you stumble on a very good coach, the coach, she's going to understand very well how, what the needs you need, and she's going to know, how your body might, you tell them about maybe your past injuries and stuff, and eventually they create a
Hmm.
program and they help you. So similarly, I think, that's where we should go, and then, like, create a fucking great social experience around that, and a very supportive community. um yeah, as the next step.
Yeah, I think right now what we're trying to kind of we're trying to like branch out and get a bunch of different like test cases and proof of concept of like what the Mochi tool and like the Mochi model can kind of be used for. I'm trying to start a group of people like within the Mochi community. Like I've got like
Mm-hmm.
a gaming archive channel where I'm trying to like introduce people to video games, and so I'm trying to motivate people to start learning about some video games, either trying out not
Mm.
necessarily video games, but also like maybe board games or role playing or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Just because it's something that I'm interested in, I would like there to be more community around in our community.
Mm-hmm.
But like
Yeah.
seeing all these like different use cases of like people keeping track of like mental fitness, mental health, like creator communities putting out like deliberate outputs. We do
Mm-hmm.
like we do a zine at Mochi also, and using it to keep track of that is one of the things that we're definitely trying to implement. And so, yeah, dude,
Yeah. It's awesome. Love it.
it's great like getting to see getting to talk with you about like both your motivation in like your implementation of your own mission statement, but also like the way that this idea of accountability, community, social like development of values of culture of this idea of something that we all kind of share, um, all around a little sticky rice ball.
Yeah, totally, man. But I think that honestly, yeah, there are not so many um, consumer tools, I'd say, like Mochi, I feel in Web3 that are genuinely not relying on a token to survive
Hmm.
and are have a use case that's an existing use case of here like accountability or habit building, um, that has a track because there's a body of knowledge to draw from. The thing here is add the pinch of or the social layer that we know, and the crypto incentives layer that we know how to do in Web3,
Hmm.
and do this very well and inspire, so yeah, I think Moshi is really interesting and so yeah, I hope that for the long term, like that'll remain like one of our best. It's like the maybe the treadmill to run in gyms. Is
The
it
treadmill, yeah,
treadmill that?
treadmill.
Yeah, but yeah, I this pretty iconic fitness thing. Hopefully that's kind of like an analogy it could have. But yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's great. It's very interesting, like working in Web3, uh, it like in thing in around projects that the addition of value to like the Web3 space is less just like purely speculative or built on hype, where there is an ethos and like a creative mission that is about
Mm,
developing the way we as people interact with each other in the space, as
yeah.
beyond just like, we're now able to technologically speculate on coins going up and down, the numbers growing or shrinking, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly, it's. I mean, that's part of the innovations of Web3. And we now have to put it at the service of some things. And I'm really excited to see how even like tokenomics are going to work in Moshi and how
Yeah,
all some
yeah.
of the features
Yeah,
that you guys are working
I've
on.
been trying to do a lot
Yeah.
of modeling for that, so I'm very curious to see how it works out as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll probably leverage some of these things in the uh still having some work to do on the experience side, but some of these like gamification features and stuff.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, I think eventually the goal, and it's in the name again, like two plus, it's about the in phases should be on bringing like tokenomics, the accountability, the staking in Moshi, the bonding, um, the I don't know, NFT badges, rewards, competition, all that should be in the service of people bonding with each other. That's kind of
Hmm.
like what I'm hoping for. So that's the thing we want to focus on. That's the innovation of Web3, I guess. That's community, um,
Building
and that's why
social,
Web3.
yeah,
Yeah, it's community. It's like honestly, and it's in many ways, and we're seeing it now, and I want to be upfront about it. In many ways, it's gated communities. Web3 today is like the whole the value and tokens and stuff. They all this value, like in NFT word and stuff, like at this point, comes from the gating aspect of it. And
hmm,
Web3 is this layer of like we have all the. It's like the internet before was like this big whole public square, and at some point in the past it was fine, and but like now there's like 8 billion people in public square and they keep fighting with each other, and you don't really feel at home on these like big social platforms. So
hmm,
people now started to uh, go with people they relate to. So that might be in mental health in this community, that might be habit building, that might be so many other around the projects, different ways to do that. Um, but yeah, building these more like private spaces with a culture that's different from also just like mainstream variation, a subculture, let's say. Um, and so all these small islands are being created at a time where people and the structure of society is changing so rapidly. And yeah, there's been a gap in where people gather, I guess. And so
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah.
All right. So, uh, your website, twoplus.xyz. Anything else you want to plug? Albiverse, you have a blog, correct?
Yeah, I have a blog that I haven't. I want to post again, but now about mental fitness. Used to be DAOs. So Albiverse.substack, I guess you can find it on anything. Probably Twitter is the best place. At Albiverse, Albiverse. Yeah, that's where I'm most active.
And the two plus Twitter, is it two
Yep,
plus underscore
it's
XYZ?
exactly, exactly. Um, Yeah, and we'll post more. We'll post updates about the alpha. We'll post updates of registrations for the beta soon, and share a lot more. So yeah, keep posted, guys, and let's build this strong mental health together.
Yeah, man. All right. This has been Louis of Albiverse. Louis, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Robin, for having me, and it was really cool and chill conversation. Really appreciate your moderation, your facilitation. That was dope. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I'm gonna do a quick outro.